Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the channel. So, this has been quite an experience, and all I would ask is if you enjoy it, then give it a like or give it a share because I'd really appreciate it and it'll help my channel to grow. So, what is it? Well, during the course of my investigations into UAP and consciousness, this out of body experience or near death experience topic just keeps coming up. And I couldn't help notice the similarities and the crossovers. So I thought rather than just research it, the best thing to do would just be to speak to people that have had these experiences and see if I could see any common themes or anything like that. So that's what you're about to watch. Now, in this episode, you're going to see really a summary of those conversations and some conclusions that I've drawn after speaking to all of the interviewees. And then following this are going to be the interviews themselves. So the idea being that, if you're not too interested in it all, then this one should cover the major themes. But if you really enjoy it, then you can get in depth and check out each interviewee in full following this. So I hope you really, really enjoy it, and let's get into it. So, the whole idea for this really sparked off following a conversation that I had with Jimmy from the UAP files, Jeff Nuscatelli, who you probably know from the Merge podcast or the UAP files podcast, where he's been interviewed before, and Scott Gearon, who's a very inspirational character who had survived a parachute accident and gone on to do motivational speaking, but also experienced lots of UFO events. So prior to Scott's interview on UAP Files, we had a chat with him and Jeff, and obviously the subject of his near-death experience came up. At which point Jeff said that he'd had one as well, and they were both extraordinary. So there's probably no better place to start than by just showing you a clip from that UAP Files episode of Scott's accident and subsequent out of body
I jumped, and
experience.
so I went up with my group, and 13,000 feet. We jump out. We're still in my conscious memory, right? So I remember being on the helicopter, looking out, seeing the earth down there, trying to see, okay, where's the drop zone, and see what's down there. And then then my conscious memory picks up several days later in the hospital in ICU, where I'm trying to talk. I can't talk. I'm writing with a pen on paper because of the tubes and everything that are in my throat. I remember asking the doctor, am I blind or is my neck broken? And so that's where my conscious memory picks up. But my unconscious memory occurred, had to occur right at the time of the accident, because I don't remember jumping and I don't remember the accidents. What happened was we jumped out at 13,000 feet and we were free fell down at 3,500 feet. We all have altimeters. Some are on different parts in their helmets, some wrist. Mine was on my wrist. And then at like 4,000 feet, we break off in our group and we separate so we all could open our parachutes in our own airspace. And so this was my 90th jump, my 90th free fall. So I wasn't, scared and didn't know what to do. I was comfortable. I enjoyed it. It was fun. Um, so I expect that I was doing everything that I have done on my previous jumps, like my 89th jump and on before that. So I would have 3,500 feet, deployed my canopy, which was a shoulder mounted ripcord handle, pulled it, parachute open, look up, make sure it's open. And but what I do remember at that time is seeing my body on the ground with a couple of guys next to me, Dave and Bobby. And I'm not in my body, although I feel like I'm in my body. It's weird. So I'm not putting it together that I've in my mind. I don't think that I've had a parachute accident. I don't know what it is. I'm just my body's there, and I'm surrounded by a light. It's like if I describe it like a, 40-watt light bulb, a low light embracing me, and that light is energy. It's love, and it is the most peaceful, embracing, loving feeling I've ever felt. But over an area that I would say is over my right shoulder area, although I'm not in my body, it just feels weird because I'm moving, like my consciousness is what's moving my soul. I'm moving away from my body. And there's in this very, very bright area are three figures. And I assume them to be human figures. I can't tell who it is. It looks like they have some type of a hooded gown or something, but there's three figures, and the light behind them is so bright I can't tell who it is. But I'm going towards them, and I know they're telling me they are there to meet me, and I don't understand to meet me, but I know I'm going to them. And when I get almost to them, and I'm thinking, well, I'm gonna see who this is, and I hear a voice clear to me right now as it was then. It's red. It's time to go now. And then it kind of gives me that realization I have a choice. And I say, God, I'm not ready to go yet. And I have those million feelings, thoughts, lessons, whatever pour into me. And I turn my head away from that bright area. And then next thing I know is that waking up in ICU. And 18 months later, many surgeries later, I started jumping again.
That's incredible, man. It's so profound. So for the audience's sake, you've then used that experience to inspire other people to overcome their injuries and just generally their state of mind.
I never set out to do that to inspire anybody to overcome things, but I have learned from what some people have told me, the things that they've been through, and I've talked to different people, and it relaying that type of story and my experiences from the accident and what I went through to recover and to get my job back has helped others in some way to realize that they can overcome their own issues, whether it be physical or whatever it may be in life. So um, it makes me feel good that I can do that.
So as you can imagine, after hearing Scott's account there, I was fascinated by what his experience really was. And Scott, in particular, is from the most elite of elite fighting forces ever, frankly. So he's got absolutely no reason or motivation to make up anything because, frankly, his day job is the stuff that we go to the cinema to watch action movies about. And Jeff's account was really interesting too. Now, Jeff's got his own interview that he did with me coming as one of the episodes which will follow this one. So check that out. And so, after speaking to the two of them and then both having this experience, I wanted to understand what had happened. And this is where I got some help from Jimmy at the UAP files because he shared a story for me asking for people with an NDE to come forwards. And I posted in the Reddit r/experiences. And I got a lot of positive attention from there. And all of a sudden, there's a bunch of people that wanted to tell me their story. So I started conducting the interviews, and there was an incredible range of people. What is really significant is the interviews that you're about to see aren't from polished podcasters and practiced orators. In many cases, This is the first time that these people have spoken about their experiences. You'll see there's a huge range of emotions involved with this, and many of them are very private people. For example, Shen just lives up in the mountains doing his art, doesn't want any attention from anybody, and I'm the first person he'd told about any of this stuff. So you have to bear that in mind. I mean, we're used to people that are really good at getting all this stuff off their chest, and these are people, regular people, that this phenomena, this situation has picked up, completely shook apart, and then plonked them back into society. So that's worth bearing in mind. It's also really important that these people have a place to share their story. I think it's really interesting when you have like a multispectral analysis. So these people are from all around the world, different cultures, beliefs, all of that sort of stuff. And yet there are clear similarities in their experience. So next, I'm going to show you a table of, after I'd done the experiences, the sort of, I noted down commonalities between the two. And the main things that I found are these. So almost every encounter involves a soft but very bright light, the presence of entities, non-verbal communication, and the transfer of knowledge, and certainly a massive ontological shift and a change of cultural and spiritual beliefs, a sense of timelessness or missing time, a predominant feeling of calm and love and tolerance and peacefulness, an out-of-body experience, as in physically looking at your own body, and a hitchhiker effect, by which I mean a continuation and acceleration of paranormal events following on from that initial triggering, and UAP sightings.
Went back, took a break, came back, and I remember as I was walking to go back into the party, I looked up and there were just these like three stars, like a perfect triangle. And I was like, I've never seen that constellation, like what is that? They caught my eye, I mean, I remember looked right at them and noticed them. They weren't necessarily much brighter than other stars, but just their shape and their clarity, they were, pretty clear. And I don't know they twinkled the same either as a lot of the other stars. And so I just kind of just sat down immediately and just looked at them, just would not stop. And probably like 30 minutes into my like, staring contest, they broke formation and they did move. And they moved really slowly and they moved into another formation and then they went still again.
All of
And
a sudden, about 25 feet above our car in front of it, boom, huge, massive disc, about 45, 50 feet. The disc appears above a car, and I think I used maybe holy shit, as like an 8-year-old. It's not
Over
something
that
you're supposed to
briefly.
say, but
So I
Please,
was
yeah.
in the Air Force, stationed in Japan at Misawa Air Base, and I was an internal security guard on at the third space tracking site in Japan, and that was a facility to track objects in orbit. And I was a guard responsible for the exterior of the building. And sometime in the evening, I had gone up to the entry control point and met with some of the other guards, and we were out in the back having a smoke break. And we were just chatting and talking and looking into the area. And we had this unobstructed view. It's this big multi-acre area. There was no obstructions in between us. And about 50 feet away or so, this blue orb just popped into view. Boom. About the size of a basketball, real low to the ground. And we looked at it. It just appeared, glowing this beautiful blue color. And then it arced in a rainbow through the air. And then it disappeared right before it hit the ground. And it arced, I don't know, like 30 feet away and just bloop and vanished.
Me and all my friends, there would have been about 7 of us, maybe 7 or 8 of us. We were standing outside on the balcony, and we look over towards the park, and there's like this orange orb, and it was like slowly moving like straight up, like really slow, just keep moving up. I was like, man, that's weird. Like, what is that? And I was asking my friends, and I was like, hey, man, do you guys see that orb? And they're like, yeah.
It was about 10 o'clock at night, and I walked over to the house to take my dog back to the house. He was out in the winery helping, be in the way. And I'm in the vineyard, and I stopped to take a pee in the middle of the vineyard, and I'm peeing. Maybe you edit that part out, but anyway, I'm going.
Sulfates are an important part of it, man. I totally understand.
That's right. I'm putting it all back where it became,
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm just paying attention to my business, and then I zip up and I turn to face the winery and start walking back, and there is a orange plasma. I've never seen a UFO in my life. Never had any kind of experience. Didn't really have any kind of thought about it ever, but I've I'll look up and there is this orange plasma disc with like a window almost cut out of it, and I'm looking at it, and I'm going, and it's just like for as long as I can look and go, holy crap, what in the hell am I looking at? It as soon as I lock in and my brain goes, holy shit, it goes
Wow.
like a magnet. If I had a magnet on the table and I were to flip and have the opposite side and go down, and it just slide like that across the top of the table, that's exactly how it moved. It just went. And the
I started seeing craft in the 90s, and they were mostly like they would flash in and out of scenes that I was looking at with my eyes. Like one time I was
Hmm.
driving up the Highway 15 in a town called Escondido, which is part of San Diego County, and we were near El Norte Parkway, or there's an exit to get off the highway there, and I was headed north on 15. And I remember looking, and all of a sudden there was just this giant ship that filled the whole valley.
Wow.
And then it was like flashing in and out of my visual. And I mean, I was sober, I wasn't having a trippy day, and I wasn't having any trippy thoughts, but all of a sudden that was what I was seeing, and it was literally like flashing in and out. And it was a weird flashing too, because it had when it would appear, it had no color. It was more like a drawing of it, like it had a
Hmm.
form. It had been drawn there, but then it would flux out into it, and then I'd see the valley again, and it was there, and then it wasn't. Okay, and I was like, all right, that was strange. And then years later, I was in coming down from Sedona, Arizona, and looked across, and in the desert there was a giant ship, similar shape and size, and
Hmm.
shape. The shape was like did you watch that new the new Superman with Henry Cavill,
Hmm.
the Man of Steel?
Yep.
And you remember like the Kryptonians had their big their big explorer ships had a kind
Hmm.
of a, I don't know, like it's like a nut or something kind of shape,
Yeah.
kind of big and very similar. These ships were very similar. And I mean, this is, way before those movies were created.
I was just walking in the backyard with a friend of mine, and she was a bit younger. She would have been about 16. I look in the sky and I see this like star. Well, I thought it was a star or a satellite, but it was moving like this, like in an S type fashion.
Wow.
And I turned around to her and I said, "Hey, do you see that star like moving in a squiggly line?" And she's like, "Yeah, that's so weird." And as soon as we both looked at it, it like stopped and then zoomed off in the opposite direction. Yeah. And then I looked at her. I was like, "Did you just see that?" And she's like, "Yeah." And so I was like,
Our
"Damn."
version. So we drove on, and we drove up around that valley, and then what it did was it kind of went south, and it started doing a switchback down this, cliff face to get down to the
Hmm.
hold up 395. So I think we were on like our third back and forth, and we're headed south, going down, facing south. And I remember like something like a light like turned on the upper atmosphere to our right, and it was so bright like it lit up the whole valley. And I mean, I looked, and she looked, and it was like, then there was this feeling like a like into a real high pitch, like a rural and a high pitch sound, and then it just like turned colors. It went through like the full spectrum of colors and did like a zigzag, like zing, 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 like that, like in half a second, like shoo, 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 really
Mm.
fast, like a light trail. It moved so fast, and then went down into the valley, turned red, and just disappeared. And me and my girlfriend were both just like, looked at each other like, what the hell was that? And it was so. I mean, to me, it was like obviously a craft, and it was obviously a thing, and the way it moved was so surreal, and it just had a feeling to it, like there was a feeling that came with it,
Now,
like
when you consider that probably 80% of the people that I have interviewed firsthand have had a UAP experience, it seems like bad science to not at least consider the potential for there being a link between near death experiences and future UAP experiences. So, other commonalities. Well, we've got the presence of entities and telepathy. So, let's have a look at some of those.
Right?
Yeah.
The feelings of the gravity started to increase immensely, right? So while things appeared peaceful and serene, and some of what I saw up in the sky, sort of like up in the horizon, included like kind of like Christian visions of a large gate that couldn't be opened,
Yeah.
but the need to reach that gate, stairs sort of like leading up to it, as well as the sun being carried. Right, it was actually carried by a family member, someone I knew who was familiar, as well as there were figures underneath a lifeguard tower. It was
Mm-hmm.
a girl with a monkey on her back, and she sat and she smiled, and she was watching this thing unfold in front of me, almost as if like she had kind of already been there.
Mm.
She was familiar with the hostility of that environment. That sense of gravity only increased, so I could feel myself sort of sinking into these sands. Parts of my body began to experience like different elements, so parts of like cold, fire, ice, and yeah, this overwhelming fear of I want to surrender, right? This desire to surrender because of what I was experiencing was so universally good,
Mm-hmm.
right? But also this knowledge of like, if I were to let go, like this is not something I'm coming back from. This is not a trust us, you're gonna be okay. This is a one-way ticket that everybody faces. I don't know how long I sat there. I sat there
And
long
it was
enough.
terrifying. And I remember I was sitting on my mother's lap, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. It's too scary. And then I had that thought, and then everything got calm and quiet, and I got very calm. And then I heard this voice talking to me, and we had this conversation, like, and I was like, this is too scary. I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go. And the voice said, well, you can go or you can stay. Either way will be everything will be okay. And when I heard that, it felt like absolutely true. And then I felt this like peace. I'm like, oh, okay, then I'm good. Like either way, everything's going to be okay. It's like this certainty to it.
A minute, I'm drowning, like I'm underwater, and I'm holding my breath. And then I thought, like, I don't want to die. And so I said like a prayer to, like, in my culture. I'm Maori from New Zealand, and so we have like gods for different aspects of nature, I guess. God of the sky, God of the forests, God of the oceans. And so I said a prayer to the God of the oceans, and I was like, hey man, like, I don't want to die. Like, help me. And when I said that, the darkness like just fully consumed me. Like I couldn't see nothing. I didn't go to sleep. Like I still felt like I was conscious. Pretty sure I was conscious the entire time of the event actually. But what happened was I started seeing like flashes of faces, and it was like a lot of faces. Like I couldn't even give you a number, but it would be like maybe thousands of faces.
It's like my heart stopped, and because it kind of when it came up, it also was going up my arms, and it came up here. My heart stopped, and then everything, and I remember just kind of like floating out of my body and looking down at my body and seeing like at that point I was like pasty white, kind of gray color, and then it was just like a feeling of being pulled up into the atmosphere. I remember like floating up out of like through the house, out of the ceiling, up into the sky. And at some point when I was in the sky, like high up in the clouds, I started to feel. So I lost my brother when I was 10 years old and he was 14.
Hmm.
Leukemia, cancer took him out in like 10 months. And so he
Oh.
actually died in the same house I was having this experience. I felt his presence. And I don't have many, like, since he passed, a lot of, I think that pain it got blocked out. And I only have little snippets of time, like probably 5 times since he passed, when I kind of felt him near me. Either he came to me in a dream or I had a thought about him and felt him. But other than that, he was very distant. Well, I felt his presence like near me, and it was very comforting.
Hmm.
So I don't know if that was real. I don't know in this kind of experience you don't know what was real, but if it really felt like him, and I don't know how it distinctly felt like him, but it did. It was like implicit. There was no suggestion. It was him, and it was like very comforting, almost like a guide. Like it's going to be okay. And I remember that's
Hmm.
when I started to feel impressions. I don't remember exact words, but I definitely know there were like feelings being imparted to me that inspired thoughts. Is all I can almost like psychic kind of
Yeah,
phenomena.
totally. Totally, yeah.
And him and whatever else, it felt like maybe a little group of I don't know if they're angels. I don't know what they're if they're spirit guides. I don't know what they were, but they were kind of imparting to me like making me feel safe, calming me down because I obviously was terrified.
Hmm. Mm.
uh I mean I just died like and I was and coming to terms with it as I was going up in the atmosphere. I think when we got kind of like up into what you would call space, space was more like it wasn't dark, it was more like a light portal. Everything
Hmm.
was just really bright, a lot of light um up past the clouds. And that's when I heard, and it's funny because I've heard people talk about this, but I heard like a music like and I mean, to me, like musically, and I love music, so I know all the instruments. It sounded like a lot of trumpets. That's something I like, here in the Bible. It was like a
Yeah.
crazy amount of wind instruments, like all going off at once, but harmoniously and but like crazy, like huge and loud. It kind of like gave a space, the space size or dimension. It was like really large sound, like as if you're going to hear an organ in a huge chapel somewhere. It just had that really big kind of sound to it. And
where it reached this absolutely beautiful and epic moment. And I was in this place with the music, and my friend was also there. And it was this just brief moment, but we were both in that same space together, acknowledging each other's presence. And after, when we came out of it, we both confirmed, you were there, I was there, we were in that place together. And so it was almost this telepathic kind of experience together, being in one place at the same time, in this field of energy, if you will. um and then as the music kind of reached this crescendo in the experience, that's when it was just came into this level of light that was the most unbelievable love. And obviously there's no words for things like this, and it's why the Bible is full of story and parable.
yeah,
And it's because words don't exist in this plane. You don't communicate with words, and they just don't exist, and they don't describe that world very well. So you do your best, but so um even to say that it was light, it's not correct, you know. But it was this blinding light that you could not look away from and want to be in, and you were a part of the light. And um in that peak moment, as the music kind of reached this really epic point of back to back, just chill, you know, level songs, is when I started to get these downloads. And it was information that I had never experienced before in my life, things that I didn't have an interest in prior to or have any study on. But it was just the most profound information. I did my best to write it down as soon as I could. But topics like metaphysics, quantum physics, epigenetics, cymatics, um, you know, just things that I really wasn't even aware of were just downloaded fully into my mind. And I even had this moment where I was like, wow, Einstein didn't really have anything on what I have right now. You know, I just was in this place of what I now know is this collective consciousness, this place of collective consciousness where knowledge is just there and you tap into this level of consciousness.
I have a wonderful friend, and her husband died under horrendous circumstances, horrible farm accident, and she was left with all these children, the oldest of whom used to help his dad on the farm, and at the time he was only about 12, and he didn't know what to do. He was angry, he was upset, he felt guilty, blah blah blah, all the normal emotions that you do. And this wasn't suicide, it was just a tragic accident. And when I went round to the house, I didn't go around to preach and everything. I was just Joyce. Oh, Joyce is here, you know, come and give me loads of hugs. And I used to draw, you know, they had a kids' room, and I painted great big spiders with smiley faces. I was part of the family, you know. And his dad, who'd passed, was what made me say to him, I had to take him in the kitchen away from everybody else and say, listen, shush a minute, because he was upset and he didn't want to look at me or anything. I said, your dad wants to know what the hell's all the bananas doing under your bed. And his eyes were like that, and he was like, what? And he was, you know how these lads do. He was spinning around going, what? No way, go away. I said, tell me, what's with the bananas under your bed? Because your dad's laughing. And his grandma had been round. It was a bit, you know, challenging.
Yeah.
And she told him that if you eat a banana at bedtime, it'll help you to sleep. Now, I've heard other people say that, but he was a 12-year-old lad. He doesn't like bananas. But he realised that she was going to just keep pushing, so he said, I'll take it to bed with me. So he'd shoved them all under the bed, meaning to take them out the next day. And he'd ended up about half a dozen bananas under his bed. Now, how the hell could I have guessed that? And that was him. So that gave him a lot of peace. And it took him about 6 months before he'd actually come and say, is my dad okay?
There were some moments of telepathy that started to come in where, or I don't know if it'd be clairvoyance, but almost like remote viewing, where I was upstairs and the people downstairs would walk into the room. I would feel their energy the moment they walked into the house. And just by that energy, I knew who it was walking into the house. Later confirmed who those two people were. And at the same exact time that I felt them walk into the room without any audible cues or anything, I felt and knew who that was.
Like everything that exists in reality first existed in non-reality, which means everything that exists was pulled from this dimension of non-existence. She explained that in the beginning, the universe was, and the universe is because it did not want to not be. Like it wanted to be something. It didn't want to be nothing. And because of that, it became, and it was. So there are three sort of steps into creating, I guess. A lot of people would say like manifesting something, making your own reality or whatnot. And these are the three steps. Uh, anything, nothing, everything. Okay, that's it. Anything, nothing, everything. And basically, how that works is anything is possible. You can do anything. In order to do something specific, you have to eliminate the nothing factor.
Now, another crossover between NDE experiences and UAP experiences is this profound ontological shift and fundamental change in your outlook on life, your interests, your character, even your very personality. And I'm living proof of that. I mean, the mere fact that you're watching a YouTube channel now about spooky stuff and UAPs and consciousness, as opposed to me just having a manager's job in hospitality, as I've done for 20 odd years, is living proof that this has a complete life-changing effect. And it's not always easy. All of your belief systems are forcibly changed, and it can put a lot of strain on the relationships with those people around you that have got to know you as one person for your whole life. But there comes with it this profound need to learn about how everything works, what's really going on, whether that's through quantum physics or cymatics or resonance and all of these profound, lofty concepts. So here's some clips of people describing that journey and some of the relevant aspects of this quest for learning that they go on.
It's sort of a floodgate thing, but the problem is let's say you're on Plenty of Fish, right? You're trying to meet somebody. Um, First date, you're having a glass of wine, and then you go right into talking about out of body experiences. That's that's a date killer right there, So, I kept it to myself for a long time, and I discussed it with people on Reddit, naturally because that's where we congregate, in some other places. But I've interviewed probably 200 experiencers, 250 over the last 7 years.
End of the download. That's the end of the vision. That's the end of it. It lasted another 60 seconds, but it was put into me in a millisecond. Within a millisecond, I had the
Yeah.
entirety from the front to the back to the side. I didn't have to go through that vision to then see it. I immediately knew what it was, how it was, who it was within that millisecond. And again, I told my wife, and I was like, I don't know what happened. I have no idea. And I was like, I think I died. Like, I really do think I died. And I don't know. And tried not to think about it. Ended up going into one of the deepest depressions I've ever had in my life. I was in the Marine Corps. I was a machine gunner in the Marine Corps for a while. I've had a long life, right? A lot of exciting, dangerous stuff. And this was the deepest depression I'd ever been in. And it took a while to realize it. What had happened is I got to a place that was so dark and so deep in my mind that I had to find answers. And the first question I had was, what the fuck happened to me? What happened? What just happened? And so I started researching on out of body experiences and trying to look up answers. And the first question I had was, what am I? Who am I? What just happened to me? And somehow, some way, the universe steered that question divinely into everything else that's happened in the last 6 months.
And so people have always known me as this, confident, humble but confident person, and this changed my life. I mean, I can't even tell you. It completely changed who I am, all my motivations in life. The Sean before this was working every day to be successful financially, to be a business owner, to grow my business to the highest level possible. And none of that matters anymore, man. None of it matters anymore. And it's been a strain on my marriage. It's been a strain on, my family, my relationships with my family growing up in the South.
Yeah, because I think I was pretty pessimistic at the time, pretty bitter, pretty angry. Like I said, I was right in the process going to massage school of healing from a lot of trauma I didn't even know I had. Um, and my brother was part of it, definitely, but then there was more traumas I didn't know about that came out as well, and uh, that experience definitely, obviously opened me up to the idea that this isn't all there is. Because I definitely felt like I could have let go. It felt very it was the best feeling ever to let go of all the pressure and the God, what do you call that? It's like the stress of life, the memory of failures and when you haven't succeeded, or even the stress to try and succeed, or just all that human stuff, all that that painful kind of psychologically traumatic socialization crap that we're all inundated with. Oh, you're American. Oh, you're a male. Oh, you're white. Oh,
Mm.
you're this height. Oh, how muscular. How much money do you have? All that crap that we get. It just faded away, and all that there was just me as some sort of uh, spirit or consciousness. I was still there. Like I never felt like I was not myself. I just no longer had my body. So it also kind of really brought that home, that we are not just our body, that that there is some sort of like identity that is intangible, because obviously I wasn't in my body and I was still me, and I
Hmm.
still felt like me, whatever that means to say I feel like me when you don't have a body. But there is like feelings I feel that I go beyond the senses, you
Hmm.
know. And but what I was gonna say was I feel like as an adult relating to these supernatural experiences, a lot of them come and are not only in my mind like categorized, but they're almost like dreams,
Hmm.
because they're so unreal and they're so strange that even though I remember seeing them with my own eyes, and the same body that drives down the road every day and is, legally allowed to like operate a machine that weighs thousands of pounds, traveling at 80 miles an hour, they get framed as like some sort of surreal dream, like, and I'm always questioning, like, did that really happen? And so for me, I had to kind of just like with my art, and when I started seeing these transdimensional entities, I had to kind of consciously in place a framework where it was like, okay, when I have these strange phenomena, it's okay. It's to accept them, to embrace them, and to be like, and I think the biggest thing that comes up for anybody that's been brought up in Western medicine is, am I crazy? Am I
Hmm.
hallucinating? Am I losing my mind? Because they give us all this fear. And for me, like the way I always check that is like, am I? Am I, like, because if I can operate everything, in society, like driving is a good example, and I can do that properly, and I rely on the same senses, and I'm now perceiving this very strange phenomena with, why? What's the danger? It's not like I'm hearing voices telling me to, like, kill somebody or something demonic
Yeah.
or weird.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
all very positive. They're all very, they're just otherworldly. They're just not human. And so that really helped me, kind of just taking a making a conscious choice to accept them as real, because they kept getting framed as like, oh, you're tripping out. Oh, you're crazy. Oh, that was some weird dream. It's like, no, that was real and that really happened. I hope it's like, for me, like, I understand people that haven't had the experience not believing in it, because I don't think I would have believed until I had the
Hmm.
experience. Because my grandfather, he was a bomber or a pilot in the Pacific,
Oh wow.
and Navy in World War II, and he
Hmm.
saw craft and would talk about it when I was a kid. And his sister had a communion type experience, where
Wow.
ET like went through walls and did a probe on her mind, and she had a burn
Yeah.
mark
Yeah.
the next morning that he
Whoa.
actually saw. And so I heard these stories as a kid,
Yeah.
but I didn't believe until I had my own experience. And so I
Till
guess
it's
for
in your
me,
lane. Yeah.
yeah, I just would hope that everybody can have that experience, so they can know. because when you've really had contact and then it's not all this government cover up and all the psyops aspect of it just kind of
Yeah,
falls away, and it's just kind of an annoying
yeah,
aspect as opposed to like really,
yeah,
like I don't
yeah,
know what
yeah.
to believe.
Yeah, it's hard enough to describe when you're kind of starting at neutral, let alone starting with like that's impossible. It's like, oh wait. You know,
Uh,
so
I
so
hope they show up so everybody can have that experience.
yeah,
It would really help if they just do that. So that's what I put out there a lot to them. It's like, we're ready. Go ahead and just, really show
yeah,
up.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
it
yeah.
would be a good thing.
So at this juncture, I feel like this is probably a good time to just drop in a little interview. So, this is an interview with Caitlin, who's describing her granddad's near death experience. And it wasn't long enough to make a full episode because it wasn't her first hand experience, but it is a very interesting experience. And you can imagine, especially going back to the time when her granddad would have had this, just what a profound change it seemed to have on him. So here's a quick interview with Caitlin from Canada. So this one isn't your near-death experience. This is your granddad's, I believe.
That's right. Yeah.
Awesome. So what was his name to start off with?
His name was Andre.
Can you just tell us a little bit about Andre, sort of what he was like and the things he was into and that sort of stuff?
Yeah. So, my grandpa, he was a hardworking man all his life. He was very Catholic, was kind of spiritual. But yeah, ever since his heart attack and his experience, that's when it kind of actually opened up his spirituality more.
Ah, right. So what sort of age was he when he had his sort of near-death experience?
This was in 1985, and he passed in 2020. Can't do the math. He passed when he was 74.
Right. So he was sort of middle-aged when it happened, then it wasn't at a young age. The sort of immediate family notice a big change in him, or how did it affect him?
He was pretty private about his whole experience that he had. He started opening up a couple months after he had experienced it. I think he was a little bit nervous to talk about it.
Hmm. And this was it during a heart attack, did you say?
Yeah, so he had flatlined. The paramedics rushed him to hospital. They were doing CPR. They had to shock him. So during that whole time, I guess what happened was when he kind of woke up in this room, and it was a really it was like a long wall, and there was all of these doors along this wall, and how he described it was almost like a big castle wall with all these drawbridge doors. So I guess he kept trying to open the doors, and he couldn't get them open. And I guess he heard this voice saying, "You have to go back." So once that
Oh,
voice came, he snapped, and he woke up, and they got his heartbeat back, and yeah,
wow.
yeah,
And presumably sort of made a full recovery after that. And
yeah.
what an extraordinary experience. It's amazing how many people I've spoken to that have had this kind of not necessarily a conversation, but some form of, a voice or a little entity turning up and talking to them or anything like that. Did he describe anything else about it, or was it just sort of obviously I appreciate it was quite a while ago.
Yeah, he said he wasn't scared. He just didn't know what was happening. He was kind of in this in between. But he kind of was hoping to see like a bright light or something like that, which he didn't. But yeah, the fact that he wasn't scared, I think, gave him some comfort.
Yeah.
Um, After, I think it was months later, he had some other spiritual experiences where my grandmother was going up the stairs because they would watch TV in the basement. And I guess he saw my grandma's mom, who was deceased, follow him up the stairs. So
Wow.
uh, he had some really interesting experiences, which happened after the fact because he was never really a believer before the heart attack.
Yeah, it must have been quite a journey for him to start as sort of Catholic and a little bit spiritual. You said to seeing things afterwards. That must be
Yeah.
quite a change in direction for him. But that's really interesting. And again, there's lots of people that I've spoken to about this who have it seemed to trigger something where all the spooky stuff seemed to either be whether or not it was happening before, but it certainly seemed to be noticed by them afterwards. People seeing UFOs and seeing ghosts and all that sort of stuff. So that's really really interesting. Anything else you'd like to add about him or anything?
Yeah, I think that's it. But yeah, I think it just helped bring him comfort because my grandmother did pass before him, and just kind of knowing that there's more. But
So, a very interesting bit to add to the discussion is what if you had a little bit more control of what you were doing? What if you already knew how to ride the bike, so to speak? And a brilliant example of this is from Joe McMoneagle. Now, you probably heard of Joe McMoneagle before. He's one of the greatest remote viewers of all time. He worked for the CIA, he worked for SRI, Project Stargate. He's currently working with the Monroe Institute, the people that brought you the binaural beats and how to get out of your body. But he had an involuntary experience when he was poisoned in a restaurant. And here he is on the Sean Ryan show describing his experience.
I asked him to stick around, have dinner with us, since he had brought her and had driven so far. We were probably 200 kilometers from where the unit was that I was assigned to. So we ordered dinner, and we had before dinner drinks. And all I did was take a couple sips of my drink and started feeling really bad. And I didn't want to be, I felt like I was going to start barfing any minute. And I didn't want to do that in a restaurant. So I headed for the front door. And when I got to the front door, I remember hitting it with my hand. It was a glass swinging door. The door swung open and there was like a pop. It actually like a snap, like you snap your fingers. And I was standing on a cobblestone street and it was a warm rain and it was falling. But I didn't feel like I was getting wet. So I went like this and noticed the rain was going through my hands. And I said, whoa, now that's strange. And when I looked up, I saw this body half in and half out of this door. But I wasn't making that connection right away. So I kind of drifted over, which should have been a giveaway, but I wasn't paying attention to that. I was paying attention to the body. And I saw it was me laying on the concrete at the entry. And then the guy that brought my wife to the restaurant came out and grabbed me and pulled me up into his lap. He dropped to the pavement, pulled me up in his lap, and felt for a pulse somewhere in my neck, I guess. And then he started yelling at me, breathe, sucker. And he smacked me in the chest. Because we didn't have CPR back then. Nobody was trained in any of that stuff. And every time he hit me in the chest, I'd be back in my body looking up at him in this incredibly intense pain. And I'd be saying to him, stop. I was trying to get the words out, and I couldn't get them out, and I'd be standing outside my body looking down again. And he'd hit me in the chest, and I'd be back in my body in this excruciating pain. And I'd go, please, and I'd be out of my body looking down again. And I guess my wish came true, because I stayed out then. I just watched. And he kept hitting me on the chest. Nothing was working. And then he disappeared, and my ex-wife was down on her knees, and she was crying. And then this Volkswagen pulled up. And I think that's what he had brought her to the dinner in. So he jerked me up off the ground. He's my generator mechanic, so he was really a big guy. And he just jerked me up off the ground, threw me over his shoulder, and threw me in the back seat of the Volkswagen. And I'm standing outside watching all this. And then they took off, and I was like, whoa. So I'm flying along beside the car, going,
You're in a
stop,
full
stop.
out-of-body experience.
Full blown out of body.
This is the first one you've had.
First one I ever had in my whole life. I'm yelling, stop, stop. And then the next thing I knew, I was kind of like in the back seat of the car, hovering, which you can't do with your whole body. But I had that sense. And I saw him blow through the, back then they had customs from Austria and Germany and Austria, that kind of thing. He blew right through the customs check. Hung a hard right. Now we're back in Germany. He drove for quite a while, back across through another customs into Austria, and then back through another customs into Germany. He had to go around the city or something. But where we wound up was over near a city called Passau. It's way down in the southern tip of Bavaria. And he went to it's called a clinic or something. It's not a full-blown hospital. It's like a clinic. And he pulled me out of the car, threw me over his shoulder, and went to the door, and the door was locked. And I was like, I'm thinking, watching this, isn't that just like a hospital to be locked up when you need it? But he started kicking the door with his foot really hard. And this doctor rolls up to the door in a wheelchair. And I'm thinking, no, this has got to be a dream. That's what I started thinking. But the doctor unlocked the door, and I found out later that's what they do. They lock the door after 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night. And brought him in. He laid me on a table in an emergency room with the big lights and all that stuff.
Are you still out of body at this point?
Yeah, I'm hovering in that room, watching them cutting my clothes off and sticking all kinds of things up in my throat and up my nose and all stuff. So I don't know what the hell's going on, but I'm feeling a lot of heat on the back of my neck. And I thought, this must be the emergency light, and I must be bumping up against it. That's what my thought was. I turned around and I was enveloped in a white light. The light was the brightest light I've ever been in, but the least disturbing. It was like total, complete comfort. It's like being in the hand of God. And this voice said, it's okay. And I was like, yeah, this is perfect. And it says, but you can't stay. I went, I'm looking for something to hold on to. They're not pulling me out of here. I'm actually looking for a handle or something I can hold on to. And I suddenly woke up. I sat up and I was totally naked under a sheet, and I had tubes and wires hooked all up to my body, and I looked around and there was this German patient laying in this bed next to me. And I looked at him and I said, hey, it's okay. God's a white light and you can't cease to exist.
Now, this quest for knowledge about the other side and the survival of consciousness after your body dies is not limited to the experiences themselves. Robert Bigelow was awarded a contract by Senator Harry Reid about the National Institute for Discovery Science in order to study paranormal phenomena, consciousness. The CIA had their own study with Project Stargate with Russell Targ and Hal Puthoff and people that I've made several videos about. But Robert Bigelow is a fascinating example, and he's gone from Bigelow Aerospace and making vehicles and capsules to go in orbit to now having the Institute of Consciousness Studies. So I would love to show you more of this, but first of all, I don't want to take away from Jeffrey Mishalov's fantastic channel. But here's just the introduction to an interview with Robert Bigelow from Jeffrey Mishalov, where he gives his take. And nobody in history outside of probably the KGB and CIA have spent more money and resources researching this topic than Robert Bigelow.
Right. If you can present to the court that you can defend this, and then, oh, by the way, you get back down to the foundational thing is, do you survive your container? You're back to square one.
Right.
Do you survive your container, and prove it to me?
And for me, the big question is, so what if you survive, then what?
The research says the then what is, as you are in the process of passing over, you may have deathbed visions.
Mm-hmm.
So it can start there, that you are having deathbed visions. Or it could be a near-death experience, and it was agreed that you not come back. So there are different ways in terms of passing over. And so the then what is an acclimation. You're acclimatizing. Your soul and spirit is having to acclimatize to a really different scenery and position that you're in. The research says, and I have to keep saying it that way because it's also my opinion, but that doesn't mean anything. It's that you can back up research that's well done, really well done. You're not into a perpetual purgatory. You have free will on both sides. You have the free will to change your thinking, to change the way your spirit thinks and the way your spirit behaves. You have to desire that. You have to get to where you want that. You are tired of a darker, gloomier kind of existence where you are, and you are going to be with others that are similar, and you start to get fed up with it. And you start to say, is this all there is? You want something better. Not just more, you want something better. And the minute you start to think that way, other better equipped thinking spirits are there to help you. And so that is the progress that you're in for, or lack thereof, until you get that change of attitude and feeling to where you want to start to feel better to your fellow spirits, and change the behavior that you had as a human.
But that process also seems very similar to life here on Earth.
It has a lot of similarities because we can make choices. So we have the ability to, is the cup half full or half empty? And so we have the ability to be more optimistic, or are we pessimistic? I think of myself as an optimist. I try to be a practical realist, though, because you don't exist in a vacuum. You are existing with other fellow human creatures, right? Which is difficult because it's challenging all the time.
It seems to me in that regard, the early stages, at least of the afterlife, are relatively similar to life here and now in the physical plane. In terms of, there'll be challenges, there will be guides to help. There'll be the question of finding your way, navigating through what could be a bit of a chaotic circumstance.
Now, I'm going to have to cut that there because otherwise I could quite happily play the entire episode. And like I said, I don't want to take anything away from Jeffrey Mishalov's channel. It's fantastic. So please, if you found that compelling, go and check out the whole interview. That was the 4th interview that they've done together. However, I am no billionaire, but I'm very, very lucky to know a very gifted psychic medium, and that's my mum, Joyce. So I've actually made the last interview in this series an interview with her, because I figured what better way to finish off a series about near-death experiences than some post-death experiences. and she's got a fascinating outlook on life. So here's one or two little clips about her thoughts and perspectives on that side.
Usual. We don't have to be able to explain it, you know. I don't know how to explain it. I just know this is how it happens. I don't know how it works. That doesn't mean it's not working. The trouble is, I don't think we've got the knowledge now, scientific or otherwise, to explain a lot of this phenomena. The orbs, you know, all of this. So some of these beings that I see as well, you know, the blue one and stuff like that, they're not people in spirit, but I still get them. They're just using that same, you know, it doesn't matter if it's the tax man or your best mate. If they're ringing you, it's a phone call, and that's it. They all sound the same.
The same senses having to interpret the different sources type thing, isn't it?
Exactly. So, you know, twins can be telepathic. You can know from a long distance. If you're really close to your family member or your loved one, you'll just feel something's not right. That's an in-tuneness that's going on. So we're cutting ourselves off from the fact that we're stopping ourselves, our life here. We're stopping it here. Instead of thinking, right, well, when I go from this one, I'm telling the audience, I've told my sons that when I pop off, I ain't going to be hanging around them all the time. I've got a lot of traveling I want to do. And I'm going to go and do all my traveling when I'm dead because it's free.
And it certainly seems from the experiences that I have spoken to that after you finish coming through this difficult process of rebuilding your entire ontological view, that you are reinvigorated, reforged, if you like, with a sense of drive and purpose and a far better, more solid outlook on who we are, what we're here to do, and what comes next.
And when you're in a group like that and you're meeting so many people that don't know each other,
mm-hmm.
and they have similar stories and experiences, they just pile up. And, you know, after 2 or 3 days of that, you're like, I've talked to like 15 different people that have fundamentally the same story, right? And to me, that's important. That's data, and trying to bring all this together is important, you know.
Ascension.
Yeah.
And since that period, I have found God within, internal, within the body. We are all fractalized pieces of an infinite consciousness. And that discovery and remembrance, it immediately destroys the ego. It immediately destroys who you thought you were, this satanic biker, violent. No, you're not. You know, you're you. You're just you. You're God. You're everything and all things at the same time. And when that happens, everything changed. The way I dress changed, the way I look, the way I act, the way I talk, the way I speak, who I talk to. My frequency completely changed to where now I'm attracting different people, different walks of life, more money in the last 6 months than I've ever seen before. My purpose now is to spread the message of the awareness of who you are and what you are. I don't believe that that message involves any type of religion. I believe that I'm on the pathway of this religious studies so that I can possibly understand it. But my pathway and my purpose now is to let people understand the polytheistic viewism of this new age religion that is going to sweep over the world very, very, very soon. We will all very, very, very soon understand that we are infinite fractalized God people of the same source. And the moment you love your neighbor is the moment you stop hating your neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
It's the moment you stop war. It's the moment you stop doing everything. It's the moment you stop being an act of your service for yourself and you start providing for others because you know that they are you. They are you in a different universal fractalized version. But at some point, that'll be you too. We are all the same.
They're right there, and they're so beautiful, and they're messages that are being given to you every day. And when I finally opened my eyes and awoke to that, I'm like, oh my God, you know. And to sit back and watch me do that, just like, oh my God, he's lost his mind, you know. but I've found my mind. I've found myself. It's the total opposite. And to live in a world where we've all been trained to be all mind and not heart and spirit. It's really tough place to live. It's a really tough place to be. But I do feel like it's my purpose to find a way to not demolish someone's religion, but to open up the very real human nature that we live in, and that free will is going to allow these things to happen without boundaries. And so it's up to you to decipher, because nothing's going to stop these things from happening. And so it's up to you to have to decipher. And that's the challenge that we have here on Earth.
I think our belief systems are very much the same, man. So
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, we're living in such a beautiful time, man. To be alive right now. Think about our ancestors and all the people that I used to get upset that I didn't get to see Bob Marley live, you know. But I mean, geez, look at where we're getting to experience in this lifetime, man. Like, what amazing. I mean, it's almost like daily. It's happening daily. It's only going to get even more rapid and more epic. And I think, things that you're doing, good brother, are amazing, man. And it's just is helping us all awaken, and maybe communicate with those higher beings that have ascended spiritually, who are looking on to us and going, we're your biggest cheerleader, man. You got this. That's truly what I feel is happening with these contacts that we have. Is it's free will, and they know that they have to sit back and watch us destroy ourselves, because that's free will. That's the law of the universe. But there is some level of guidance, and there is some level of oversight and love and cheering, but I do feel like it's reaching this place where it's like, okay, we're gonna get involved here. We're gonna step
yeah.
in a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think that is a lovely way to wrap up this first episode. Now, there are excerpts from my interview with Grant Cameron I could have put in here. There are various bits from people in ufology or parapsychology that would also drop in here perfectly. But I think this is enough to get you launched off on the interviews themselves. Now, you know this channel. I don't give you conclusions or say that anything is fact. I just present data and let you form your own opinions. So the next step is for you to listen to the interviewees for yourself. So I hope you really enjoy the interviews. We did jump a few hurdles with technical issues here and there, but let me know what you think in the comments. I'd really, really appreciate it. I'm genuinely fascinated by this topic now, and I'd love to know what you think. I hope you've enjoyed this so far, and I'll see you soon.